Simcac in Rushford. And what we're talking about tonight is the Rushford Small Cities Emergency Disaster Funding. This is actually, funding is actually piggybacking off the same program that was introduced back in 2008, whereas we've updated 16 homes in the city and we're looking at updating 12 rental units. A lot of the policies are going to stay in play. Our drug-free policy, the civil rights policy, deadly force policy are all going to stay the same. What we did is we pulled out some policies that we had to change the verbiage to, and those 4 policies are in front of you tonight. What you'll find, I'm not sure what particular order you have those in, the conflict of interest policy, we just changed the title of that to the Small Cities Emergency Disaster Funding. Typically it says that if you're on the council and you live in that housing area or you work for the city, that you can't apply for this funding. But there is an out at the bottom. You can submit a review and approval for deed, and we can do that with anybody that's in that particular area that's getting worked. So that's the first policy we looked at. The procurement policy, that we changed the verbiage on that just a little bit to talk about the emergency disaster funding. It's still doing the same thing. Anybody can apply for that, any plumber that has the equipment. The only item that's really getting done is digging up from the yard to the house and then replacing the pipes underneath the sewer and the water. And then we have the opportunity to fix any cement. We have the opportunity to put in a shut-off valve in the house for that particular home. And that policy just ensures us that the person has all the insurance and contracting licenses. We're making sure that everything's above board. Doesn't stop anybody. We'll take anybody as far as when they come in, and if they're a certified plumber and they do the actual work. So that's really not an issue with that one. But what it does tell us is that they're legit. The program income, that's changed a little bit compared to what your other program is. Because we don't know the size of each loan, we're thinking that it's going to be a small loan. And what this loan would entail is, the first part is a grant. What the city digs up in the street and connects to the property line, that's a grant, and it's forgiven. But what happens if you have someone who needs a connection from their house out to their property line, and the connections are bad? What small cities let the city do is use some of that funds, not a huge portion, whatever's left over at the end of the day can be put into a pot, and they said money can be used to get a 5-year loan. And after the first 2 years, what's going to happen is if you sell your house, you owe the city back the money in whole. Over the course of 5 years, at the end of 5 years, it goes away in increments of 25% until you get to the end of year 5. What can the city do with that income that's generated? They gave you a little more leeway than just saying, well, we can put in sewer and water. They said you can do emergency plumbing work. That gives you an opportunity if someone has something that bursts in the house, in a basement, or a water heater close to pot. You could replace water heaters. That could be an emergency depending on the income. The only guidelines that you have to follow is 80% of the median income. Otherwise, that income does come back to the city, and you can use that. Best to always conduct business with deed. Right now, Christine Schreiber is our person and our contact at deed. And when that money does come back to the city, my advice would just be to talk to her, make sure that you're following that program. And there'll be reports on that in the city. The last piece in front of you in the way of policies, well, this one's actually a plan. It's the City of Rushford Fair Housing Action Plan. This was already enacted on in the last 2008 program. What we ended up doing was taking the title off it completely. And this just shows that the city will not discriminate against anybody, against race, color, religion, sex. If they're selling homes or if there's rental properties in the area, and that whenever a complaint, if you go on the back page, is received, the City of Rushford will assist households who may have been discriminated against by providing the following services. Pretty simplistic. The City of Rushford and its agents will post fair housing information, and what that amounts to is a phone number and a website where you can direct them to. That'll be your their job in the matter. We're also in the midst of putting a brochure together that we'll be dropping off for the disaster program. Every year we have to do certain things in the way of fair housing. We've done radio ads, we've posted items in the city hall. We'll be putting a brochure together, and I'll be dropping that off to Kathy sometime this week.
Spanish language?
Spanish language too. Put it into Spanish.
That you're gonna do?
We do that.
Okay.
You don't do that, sir.
My Spanish is not
Is
that
it
good.
not the best? Don't send it over to the bank. It won't be bad. Okay. Questions on the policies and procedures manual? Every time we do a program for deed, we have to put a policy together. What that does is it just negates a whole lot of issues when people say, what can we do, what can't we do? We have a policy in place, we can go to that policy, and it gives us the opportunity to answer questions. In here it talks about financial assistance, it talks about the application process. This particular one is first come, first served basis. Waiting list will be created, and then the households go on that waiting list, and we go from there. Talks about income eligibility, about 80% of the median income. And a couple weeks ago I was here and we were talking about the program in general, so I answered a lot of questions. I'd be willing to answer more questions for the new council, and that's fine. There's a program description. And at the end of the day, if there's any complaints, they can definitely come talk to SIMCAC, and we have 15 days to do a written response. The program's designed to actually do water and sewer abatement, with a small portion going towards hookup grants or hookup loans as in the form of a deferred loan program for the city of Rushford. And that's all there is to it. Most of these things have been acted on. We just changed some of the verbiage, and we changed the policy and procedures manual, about 13 pages. Any specific questions for us at this point in time?
These are city policies?
These will be policies that will be enacted by yourself, yes, and we're the administrator of those. And we've got, the other policies are in place, and we've been using those for the last 24, well, it'll come up on 24 months at the end of 2010.
And this is in regard to the 320, is it?
Yes.
$320,000 grant that we got from DEED to assist low to moderate income people with assessments on the project.
Yeah, where we're at right now is we're reviewing the policies tonight. I have the environmental piece, and I think the mayor signed that, and that's some of that. Or I believe you signed it. Remember that? Yep, she can.
Did I sign it?
That was sent to me, and all that information's been sent up to DEED. Once that gets approved, once this gets approved, and then we'll go ahead and we have a list of residents that we can send all this information out to. The letter's already been created, and we'll start getting the list together and figuring out how many people can actually apply for this particular grant. And at the end of the day, hopefully we'll know how many loans we can do based on the need out there. And that'll come in the spring, I think, when you start doing construction and the project gets underway. We've got till the end of 2011 to capture our audience and get everything spent out. Don't see it as a huge issue, at least in the way of administration.
And I know it's a minor point for some, but again, some people have gone to SIMCAC for many different reasons. Sometimes they get turned down on certain programs, and your advice is always come and ask, because each program might be totally different. And so whereas if you run into somebody as council people and say, well, I got turned down there, make sure they go back and ask, because these guidelines will, we're thinking the numbers are going to change again now at the end of this month in terms of the eligibility levels. And it'd be a shame for somebody to think that they didn't qualify just because they had another experience with a different program.
I can throw out, let's just throw a number out there, family of 4, gross-wise, 47.1 could qualify for this. So it's a median average there. Also, what we were able to do is take out the asset ruling. It doesn't matter what you have for assets. So we're just looking straight up on income. So we scrub that out of the policy. I think that'll help some people qualify.
So it's $300 and some thousand. We're basically going to make sure we get all that out to people.
That's correct.
Good.
Correct.